The Federal Aviation Administration briefly closed airspace over Lake Michigan in the US for, quote, national defence reasons. Fighter jets scrambled to the area. Is this another Chinese balloon?
Well, that's what everyone strongly suspected when...
It's the balloon that changed the world.
It's the balloon making headlines. It's from China, and it's now floating over U.S. airspace.
You shouldn't float a balloon over. It's provocative.
Gets the people going.
The balloon has violated U.S. airspace and international law, which is unacceptable.
The balloon came around my house, looked at me strange, and touched me under the table. I don't like the balloon.
Here we go, baby. Get him!
Welcome back. I don't know what exactly is happening. At this level, I can't explain. Recently, China detected unidentified object entering its airspace near Port City and is preparing to shoot it down, state media claims. You have seen recently what happened with the balloon. You have seen recently what happened in Canada. Trudeau gave an announcement few hours ago that they just shut down another unidentified. I don't know what exactly, though a lot of people are saying it is UFO. I don't want to go details into that. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please endeavor to do that. If possible, why not share this clip?
Why is the American military shooting something out of the sky over Canada?
Because it's part of NORAD. There is the NORAD is part of like it's a what you call a coalition, a consortium,
a pact of nations.
A pact,
okay.
Exactly. And so that's why we were able to do that. Again, we didn't do it on our own. We did it clearly in step with Canada.
She said, Canada. I've never heard of that before. When you take a look at what is happening, you realize, at a certain point, you will start asking questions. In the US, when this balloon was spotted, it took few days before they could shoot it down. But in Canada, they did not even hesitate to pull it down.
A suspected Chinese spy balloon, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has ordered the takedown of an unidentified object flying over northern Canada. In a tweet, Trudeau said NORAD shot the object over Yukon after Canadian and U.S. aircraft were scrambled and an American fighter jet successfully fired at the object. Trudeau's order came very shortly after the joint North American Military Response Alliance confirmed it had positively identified a high-altitude airborne object over northern Canada. All of this unfolding one day after a second object was shot out of the sky, this time over Alaskan airspace.
Shot down over Alaska, Mr. President?
President Joe Biden ordered Friday's strike at the recommendation of the Pentagon.
Like you have seen at the beginning of the clip, China is saying the same thing, that they have spotted unidentified object. In Canada, they said the same thing. In the US, we saw a balloon. Now, what is happening? That is a question I really want to know. I have seen a lot of media reporting, they are reporting trash. Like seriously, especially CNN, the way they are twisting what is happening.
How is it possible that this administration discovered at least 3 previous balloons that flew over the U.S. under the previous administration, but Trump officials didn't know it was happening?
Yeah, so look, I think that, and we have talked about this before, about how when the PRC government surveillance balloons transited the continental U.S. briefly, at least 3 times, as you just mentioned, during the president's prior administration, and once that we know of the beginning of this administration's, but never for this duration of time, as we know. This information was discovered prior to the administration left.
According to this article from the Daily Mail, China is preparing to shoot down unidentified objects spotted flying over a port. According to report, the object has been spotted near the port city of Quebec and an employee of the Marine Development Authority of the City General District said authorities are getting ready to take it down. The employee had not been told what the object is, but they say the fisherman in the area had been warned to be careful. Reports about the mysterious object have been made in the Chinese government mouthpiece, the Global Times, in social media posts on Weibo. It comes after the US and Canada down several high-altitude objects so far this month. Going down on this article, the United States government said one of the balloons shot down off the coast of South Carolina had contained spying equipment. Beijing fired back and said the balloon, which flew over the U.S. for 3 days, had been weather equipment. A Montana congressman said on Saturday night that he had been told an unidentified object was spotted over his district, forcing the temporary closure of airspace, and the search for it will resume at daylight. Like you saw at the beginning of the clip, Sky News Australia is reporting that the airspace has been closed.
Unidentified aircraft have been shot down. Of course, now we know very well the first one, the Chinese balloon, the second two over Canadian airspace and Alaska as well. Those ones are more opaque at the moment. We don't know exactly what they were. We do just know that they've been shot down. Chuck Schumer on one of the Sunday morning shows seemed to confirm after a briefing with Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor to the White House, that they were indeed smaller balloons. But the question still remains about why the first one was allowed to surveil the US for such a long period of time. Now, Chuck Schumer answered this by saying that they did manage to gather a lot of intelligence in the meantime.
The first balloon, there was a much different rationale, which I think was the appropriate rationale. We got enormous intelligence information from surveilling the balloon as it went over the United States.
Didn't the Chinese get enormous intelligence as well?
Well, they could have been getting it anyway, but we have to know what.
Federal agent ordered a closure of Montana Airways in the hours after the object was shot down in Canada. Matt Rosendale, a Republican elected in 2020, said he had been briefed by the Department of Defense while he was in Lincoln-Reagan dinner. Fighter jets were scrambled and airspace above Havre, a town of 10,000 people 13 miles south of the Canadian border, was shot at 7:50 p.m. before being reopened about 15 minutes later. At an event, a Lincoln-Reagan dinner in Columbus, Montana right now, Rosendale told Fox News. And DOD calls me as I have been sitting here and started giving me briefing to tell me what was going on. I clarified with them, and this is actually the fourth balloon. The fourth balloon. You can imagine. China is there scrambling to shoot down their own.